Our son is Evan,
Not those
Okay.
ones.
and he got a shot today, just kind of throwing him off, so he was planning on.
Yeah,
getting
it's a
it,
whole new
but-
new
well, that's
thing.
what
It
I
gives us
decided.
it's called basically a
So,
conductor.
going anyways, bye.
I thought maybe it
So,
might be something to
he
orchestra
got
they
involved
want.
with,
Yeah, they're
starting
used
to
for
get more
orchestra
involved
as
with,
well.
there's a Chabad that's
But
on
you might,
campus
if
in
you need
Epic.
some more,
Okay.
you like the wine.
And so,
We'll
so
see.
it's
Right
like,
Right now, we
it's
just
like a
need it
young
for the rabbi and
professionals
myself.
kind of
No, what I'm
thing.
saying is,
But
you
I
might be able to
didn't,
go back to
I don't
manufacturing.
know anything about what your programming
Just
looks like,
replace
or if
the
you're trying to
older
capture
part
that
and
group
the
of people.
base be the
But
same.
if you're,
There
you know,
might be
if
an
you're
option.
looking for
Right.
contacts, we could probably hook you
Well,
up with a name.
Yeah,
I
well,
certainly did not
right
know
now we don't
about
need them for
that.
anybody but the rabbi and
Okay.
myself. So
Full-time
I'm just saying,
presence.
you just.
Somehow,
It's an
it's
option.
probably not an office, it's
It's
probably,
an option.
it's probably some employees who are very.
Exactly,
Right.
it's the employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they
I
had
appreciate hearing
yeah, they
that.
had a Shabbat day. It was kind of like a young professionals Shabbat. You know, who you know, just forming a community.
Okay.
And I just think it would be a great way to tap into, to feed your organization.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
then give them opportunities that are Hasidic in nature.
I think a varied approach to Judaism is like, this is our cantor.
Hi there.
This is Cindy and Daryl.
Do you know Penny Steyer?
no, I don't.
Do you go to Asrui or?
I mean, I've done some things with Azuri, but like not
Okay.
not for a while.
Many of us are really connected, but.
Okay, okay.
What's her name?
Penny Steyer, Steyer. She's at Temple Shir Shalom. And she's having the Shira, the summer.
It's quite possible that we've met, and if I saw her face, I might recognize her, but I just don't know the name.
Okay, and are you full on cantor?
Oh
Soloist?
no, I'm ordained cantor.
So you're in the Cantors Assembly and.
Not in Cantors Assembly, in the American Conference of Cantors, which is a reformed
Right,
movement.
right.
I thought about also applying to the CA.
Sure.
A lot of cantors are dual members,
Exactly, yeah.
but I've just never applied for membership to the CA.
We're singers, so
Oh.
if you play in our jam, we'll be joining you.
Wow. Next.
We do in fact have a choir that is slowly rebuilding after since COVID.
Yeah, our son does not sing, but if you need a treble, there. He's your guy.
Oh, this is the person to talk about. On the third Friday of each month,
Okay.
we try to gather musicians and have not
Sure.
exactly jamming, but it's more organized.
Yes, I would say
Some
we have not had a.
It's,
Yeah.
These are the musical.
Yeah,
Love it.
we kind of just gather some of our volunteer musicians and we kind of form a pickup band essentially.
Please, our pleasure. Go ahead.
I figured it out. Yeah.
Which one should I get?
Number one.
Okay. What was the story?
It was this weird setting, like lesson.
If you go hard, I'll take that.
That's on the iPad.
Oh.
Looks like it's on the wall panel.
Test 1, 2. Oh, that's good. Okay.
Pretty much it was just assigned to the social policy. I'll eventually stop putting that on iPad.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a hip hop.
Thank you.
What's different than? Thank you so much.
I have
Hey, good Shabbos. How are you?
Yeah,
at Sharit Set.
yep.
I know Amy. Oh gosh.
There we go. See, we're only 3 degrees away.
She's one of my references for this course.
Oh my gosh.
Are they still doing performances?
No, that's not true.
So Amy's family and my
social media, you know.
Yes, he's the name that, yes, they sit in Mike's
They've
kitchen
been,
and they work.
I think earlier in Dan's career.
Correct.
And they're at camp together, and then, yeah, so that's, so we end up, our kids are like,
Uh-huh.
it's very easy, it's a great camp.
Yeah, I've mostly interacted with Dan through like Common Shira and things like that.
Sure, sure. He was our musician
It's all we ever
resident,
use.
so he would come in and jam.
Uh-huh. It does. It zooms in and, you know.
We call our Sundays on the shore.
That'll be my camera, like, that'll be the camera's camera for singing or speaking, focus. You know, that's the fun.
Yeah, that's something I want to get into. COVID is
Right.
Yeah, and I only came here about 8 months before COVID. So I was still on board.
So,
I was ordained in 2018. I took 1 year after ordination and did hospital chaplaincy internship, and then I came here.
got it.
We are not, but we're here twice a year. So you might see us twice a year.
Oh,
In
that's
the fall, my whole
Sure.
and then,
Oh, that's interesting.
I do not.
Hi.
I work for a
Okay. How are you?
Victoria Oh, no, so we're not.
University of Michigan.
We're in
On the proper side.
Midwestern College Town Capital of the state. I mean, like,
Understood.
Where did you go to college?
Here in Madison, Florida.
Oh, okay.
It's basically the same except for the weather.
Correct.
But Lansing is not Madison.
How are you?
No,
No,
because,
not at all.
because the college campus is in East Lansing, which is much different than.
It's a very different
Yeah.
vibe.
Judge of calls.
Versus here where.
Well, you know what I say. Long live the king, so. Queen is dead, long live the king. So. Is that?
Yes, it is.
It's Elizabeth.
It's a point.
But she's looking in the wrong direction. I thought she looked, she looked to the left. Because there was a big article in the Times today.
The enamel. It's actually, it's
There was a
a
piece in the Times today about the fact that she looked wondrous. The custom is for the next ruler to look at the other direction. When they get into new points. I have a pound of art. I'll just look at it.
We had the 80th anniversary here, because that was my first or second year here. In fact, I think it was my first year. No, yeah, so like 83. And part of the building was extended. That wall where the stained glass is right now used to be.
Oh, that's really hard. It's a bold art. And I think these points
Somewhere between 550 and 600.
By the way, if you need pirates,
Oh, don't be sorry. You never have to be sorry.
fill in for you. Please do.
No, I made,
Well, we can give you prices, that's what you need to do. It's been a pleasure.
Well,
Pleasure to meet you.
have far shorter burns from Starbucks being a shift supervisor there. Yeah. 4 years as a shift supervisor.
That is hard.
Like East Town, or, yes, East Town Mall, by Talkers and Taco Bell.
it was very cheap considering it was an oval frame.
Yeah, that one's really cool because it's got, dresser and a really nice interior design.
Welcome.
Shabbat Shalom.
No?
Yeah.
You did,
I think that they try to accommodate for the rush hour.
Plastic over it. It's sitting in the corner of the ice.
still hasn't come in.
The main piece of the trunk.
This is the Michigan. Not the
I don't think
No, Smitty, please show him, Joel.
But, you know, if you wanna go through it.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in it this year. I haven't seen it.
I know.
But,
Yeah,
yeah, they should, I should have it.
How many shepherds?
How old is your?
35
No.
shepherds.
Actually, our money's worth on this last year.
We did too.
Probably using coupons in there.
Did you go to high use?
Candle blessing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, that's a good people.
Thank God. Thank God, yeah. As they always do, right? You don't expect it. But good to see it. See you a while. Very short.
Well, he didn't give him, he told him as his best friend, so the Muslims by virtue are also his best friends. That and the guy in South North Korea. I just can't believe how people are so, I just don't believe it.
Yeah, as soon as I showed them to me,
Oh, it's a conspiracy.
Why?
Did you see that front line on PBS about they had a real good front line that was on, how the Republicans in Congress just hung on to Trump thinking that he would pull them up. Instead they, it's really good one for you to get. What's that? We're gonna have to absentee vote because we'll be city. Oh, no, definitely. That's a good one. I have voted in every election possibly voted. I missed the tree, being on a submarine in the Pacific was an excuse for the first one.
Shabbat Shalom, friends. May this Shabbat be a good one for each of us.
Melody connected with this season of the month of Elul. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. For those who are joining us here in our sanctuary and for those who are joining us online, we welcome you because we really welcome one another. The Shabbat is a place where we join as a community, although maybe Cantor, Nami, and I are officiating, whatever that might mean, that we are here just with one another. For those who are joining online, we hope that you see the links in the video description, a link to our prayer book. It is a flipbook style version. Remember that when you get to the right page, follow the page that's in the brackets. That's the page number that we're going to be following in the prayer book, and there's also a link to the program tonight. There are a couple of musical pieces, tefillot, a couple of prayers that we'll be offering from the program. And for those who are joining us here in our sanctuary, we hope you have a program too. We'll be referring to pages 3 and 4 at the proper time when we offer worship. At this time of year, the time of Elul, the time of reckoning, the time of reconciling, and the time of moving forward with a pledge toward renewing good things in the year to come. We say daily, really, words from Psalm 27. This evening we begin our worship with a segment from Psalm 27 we find on page 662 in the prayer book, Achat Sha'alti. 662.
Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota avakesh. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota avakesh. Shivti b'veit Adonai, כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו.
Shabbat Shalom. For those of us who know what happened at the campus of the University of Wisconsin this week, with 5 Jewish organizations that got tagged with chalk on the outside of their offices and facilities, we still are painfully aware of what anti-Semitism is like. And although we hadn't anticipated beginning a service with these words, still we come to this place thinking about that for those of us who are so affected, because we are in pain with those students and those organizations that suffered this. It brought convulsions and chaos to the minds of those young people, but it also, I thought, brought promise and purpose to our struggle against the ignorance and the hatred that exists in our society. On Sunday, we'll observe the 21st anniversary of 9/11 in this country. And there, too, we experienced the pain, and many of us in the sanctuary today remember that day, remembering the pain and the shock of that day. We remember the efforts of an interfaith community to bring people together. And I have to say, I also remember the good efforts and the good work of our nation's president on that day, who tried very carefully to bring our country together with its religious communities. So I think that is something to bear in mind as we observe this anniversary. Because it reminds me, too, that when we come to this sanctuary, we come to this place of peace, that this is indeed a place of peace. And I wish we didn't have to have a police officer outside guarding, but we do because we want to make sure that we are protected in this place. Our history is certainly filled with difficulty. But as a place of peace and resolve, as a place that can bring peacefulness to our hearts, as a place to begin Shabbat, so we do on this very beautiful night here in Madison, Wisconsin. I'd like to invite you as a community to turn to page 120 as we offer a bracha for the light of Shabbat that we are fortunate to bring to our midst. We thank God for this light. Loving God with a full heart, we come to you on this Shabbat, although our weeks are filled with difficulty, and we anticipate a new year coming and with all of the potential promise for that new year. We hope that this weekend, that this day of Shabbat, that this rest will allow us to open our hearts to you, to your messages of joy and peace and of potential for ourselves and for our community, for the world. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. On page 124, we continue at the top. We join one another. We enter the sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured a beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Weariness, doubt, flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. We begin Kabbalat Shabbat on the page 3 of the supplements that you have with you, or Zarua on page 3 of the supplement.
Or Zarua la tzadik u'le'ishrei lev simcha. 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 We must keep our hopes alive. We must raise our voices high. We must hold each other tight. We must stand up in the night and be a light. Or Zarua la tzadik u'le'ishrei lev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik u'le'ishrei lev simcha. We must spread our love around. We must feel this spiritual sound. We must work till peace has come. We must love and live as one and be a light. Or Zarua la tzadik u'le'ishrei lev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik u'le'ishrei lev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik u'le'ishrei lev simcha. אור זרוע לצדיק ולישרי לב שמחה.
We continue on page 138 with Lecha Dodi, where tonight we're offering verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, and as is our custom and the custom in many synagogues, on the 9th verse we rise and we face the door where we entered, symbolically welcoming Shabbat to our community as we hope to bring peace to our hearts as well. Page 138.
Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה, זמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה, התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי, אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
And on page 140, we continue with Tov Lehodot, page 140.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר, בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות, בלילות. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון, טוב ולזמר לשמך עליון, עלי עשור, ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון, בכינור, בכינור. טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון. טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון. ולזמר לשמך עליון.
Oops, that was me, sorry. For these days of Elul and for our prayers of repentance, one of the things about Elul that's so important, that when we seek reconciliation with others and we consider our deeds, we also have to seek compassion for ourselves. Not that it is about us, but we always need to be good to ourselves and remember that that too is part of the world in which we live. Doing good deeds for others means also starting with strengthening our own insides and how we view ourselves. And I wanted to offer these words from Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, who is one of the masters of our Musar tradition, of our character development, ethical character development system. He writes this. He says, compassion is the inclination to be connected to the other and enter their situation, the soft heart that is affected by another's suffering and is empathetic to that suffering. And what he implies, too, is that as we are compassionate to others, I would say it means being compassionate to oneself as well, that we can be critical, but at the same time be kind to ourselves and our own souls, even as we examine our deeds in the next 4 to 6 weeks to come, which is our time of repentance. May we never be estranged from one another, and may we never be estranged from ourselves as well. Our worship for Ma'ariv begins on page 146. We invite the community to rise for Baruch Hu. Again, page 146. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed.
On page 149, at the middle, we read together. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
El Chai v'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'ma'ariv Aravi.
Amen. At the top of page 150.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael, Amcha Ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, בשוכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגד יומם ולילה יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני. ילאי לי 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 Amo Yisrael.
Page 152.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. We continue at the top of page 154.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
On 157, at the middle, we continue responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt, we were delivered. At Sinai, we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be at one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
158.
Ya bye bye bim bim bam, ya bye bye bim bam, ya bye bye bim bim bam, ya bye bye bim bam. I die 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 die, ya bye bye bim bam. I die 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 die, ya bye bye bim bam. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נוראתי לו דוספלת, נוראתי לו דוספלת, מלכותך ראו בניך, חוקי הים לפני משה ומרים, זה לי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Ya bye bye bim bim bam, ya bye bye bim bam, ya bye bye bim bim bam, ya bye bye bim bam. Ay dai 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 dai, ya bye bye bim bam. Ay dai 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 dai, ya bye bye bim bam. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
On page 160, we offer now Hashkivenu, an evening prayer, wishing that our rest is easy tonight and tomorrow we are able, with God's help, to rise and to face the next part of our lives in this world. Page 160.
I'm going to start on my own, but then there will be a moment for us all to come together. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'ha'amidenu shomrenu l'chaim, uvros aleinu sukat shalomecha, v'taknenu b'etzah tova milfanecha, v'hoshienu leman shemecha, v'hoshienu leman shemecha, v'hoshienu leman shemecha, v'hoshienu leman shemecha.
The strength of our character is not only found in knowing that we support others, but we actually support one another in community. There are those in our world who place everything on individual relationships with a close friend, confidant, or a therapist perhaps, and they operate their lives only on the basis of a relationship with that one individual. But sometimes such an exclusive dependency is exactly that, a dependency that can end when that relationship ends. So we learn to place trust in more than one person. We place our trust in a large number of people, a community perhaps. And that trust extends out into broader and broader circles so that everyone will have sufficient friends at time of trouble and difficulty, and we raise each other up in this very complex world.
V'hoshienu, v'hoshienu, leman shemecha, v'hoshienu, v'hoshienu, leman shemecha. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום, מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורש סוכת שלום, עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל, ועל ירושלים.
when we offer our evening worship, it usually is with the hope that we rise on the next day and we are able to face the world and all of its problems. And even we make this prayer when we say, oh, such a heavy week we've had. Or my body hurts because it's been through so much, and whether we do that intentionally or because it's been done by somebody else to us or other causes, we just feel very tired as we head into the weekend. And that is why we have Shabbat. But it's important to know that sometimes our mere presence or a word or a hand on the shoulder or even a fist or an elbow bump in these days sometimes when we're a little distanced, we don't know when one small gesture will help raise the spirit of somebody else. And that is the purpose, again, also of why we gather in community, to gather strength in order not to search for those occasions, but just to be our normal, natural selves so that we can extend our compassion and our humanity toward another person. We don't know exactly why we are in this world, but since we are here, let us strive to make it every day a better world. Our tefillah begins on page 164 as we invite one another to rise. Page 164.
Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise.
Page 166.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Konei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה.
168.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. משיב מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Amen. Page 170.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Amen. We continue through page 180 with silent worship, standing or sitting as is your desire and custom.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן.
תודה. I want to offer just a few remarks about this week's Torah portion. We are in that time of year again, the month of Elul, when we read the Torah in its order, because that's what we do. The haftarot for this time of year are different haftarot. They're all from the book of Isaiah, which gives us comfort, we hope. Except that this parashah is about warfare. The parashah starts off and says, when you all go out to war, meaning that's the command of God and Moses to the people, ki tetzei lemilchama, when you go out to war. So ostensibly, it's about war, but the parashah includes many different laws, many different kinds of things, rules on the conduct of war, in dealing with prisoners. What happens to the wayward and obstinate child? You probably know that. Take the child to the square, you make the declaration that your child is drunken and a glutton, and then he or she or they get punished for their behavior. There is even laws here about proper animal welfare in this parashah. There is an interesting point that I want to talk about briefly, and that is, it says when you go off to war against your enemies. So some of the rabbis ask, why is the word enemies there? Why is the word enemies? Why does it say when you go off to war against your enemies? To our ancestors, the enemies were those who fought against you at a time of war, but it wasn't that they fought against you at a time of required war. It was, say the rabbis, the enemies who fought against you at a time when you started the war, when it's a discretionary war. And why would you start a war? The rabbis say you would start the war to enlarge your own territory. Perhaps you want to bring glory to your land or to your land's ruler and sovereign, so you want to, make a name for yourself out there. Maybe you want to intimidate your enemies so they are less likely to attack. Some of us can identify with those causes. Those of us who, thank God, in this room and online fought for our country and risked their lives in the service of our country, and we thank you for that. They understand some of the important motivations that send our country off to war not for the reasons of self-aggrandizement and not for the reasons of enlarging our territory, at least in our day. And I think we've learned a lot about what that's all about. But when I read this about going off to fight or going off to a battle against one's enemy, I think about this time of Elul, and I think about fighting the enemies that are within us, the enemies that are within ourselves. And how do we battle against our own natural inclinations, and how do we overcome the natural human instinct for aggression and calm it with perhaps an unnatural tendency toward compassion and toward calming? And I think about these words of an author. You likely know this person. His name is J.R.R. Tolkien. And in Fellowship of the Ring, he puts this dialogue in the mouths of Frodo and Gandalf. Some of this was seen in the movie. Some of it, I hope I'm quoting correctly from the book here. That they're on, Frodo Baggins and Gandalf are sort of on their quest. They're beginning the quest. And Frodo says something like, "I wish it need not have happened in my time." Meaning that, why am I here? I'm not cut out for this journey. I'm not cut out for this mission. I'm not supposed to be here. And Gandalf responds this way: "So do I, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." Again, the key and the operative statement here of Gandalf is all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. So at this perilous and perhaps tender time of year, I think we have to realize a couple things. We can't control every event in our lives. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations where we simply have to react, and we have to react from the best of our impulses. But we need to decide what to do at that moment to make that moment valuable and not squandered. And we have to remember just a few very important aspects. First, we have to remember that everything may not be important. Everything that happens in our life may not be so important that we have to react every time something happens. And each of us in our lives may have those things happen, right? We have to decide, how am I going to react? Am I going to get angry? Am I going to make myself tense? Or am I going to just sort of say, all right, that's the way it goes. I have to let this pass. Because we also have to remember that every time we engage in battle, if you will, with a force that is either internal or external to us, it takes our time and attention away from really more important matters. Again, how do we wish to use the time that we have before us? Each of us has limited time on this planet. Each of us, we don't know when our last breath will take place. And so we have to do what's best. And we have to make priorities for the truly important matters. How do we want our legacy to seem in the future? This is from the commentary of someone whose name is Shabbat Program. That's not his name, but that is his title. He is a 20th century commentator, Shabbat Program. He's actually a rabbi in Jerusalem in the 20th century. I think he's still alive. He says that one can only engage in warfare if we are pitched against an enemy. In other words, our warfare only has to be in an aggressive situation where we know that the person against us is an enemy. But if someone coming to us with an issue is not really an enemy, then he says we have to stop and hold back and say, this is not an enemy against whom we need to fight. This is not what's referred to in this week's Torah portion when it says when you take the field of battle against your enemy. And again, just we have to remember what is worthwhile and what is not worthwhile, what is necessary for the health and preservation of relationships in our world, and what is going to enhance our lives rather than promote something which will simply be a Pyrrhic victory, a victory that may look good in the short term, but in fact will burn up and burn us in the long term. So when we take the field against our own impulses or against situations that we confront, may we make good choices for ourselves to make the world a better place. Ken Yehi L'Ratzon. I want to invite the community, we would like to invite the community to turn to page 371, as now we offer prayers of healing and wholeness for people who are known to us and those who may not be known to us. Again, I say this all the time, but we don't understand exactly the ways of healing, either sometimes in medical situations or in invoking God to get involved in the healing process. But it has been shown in some kind of context that when someone in our community knows that we are praying on their behalf and offering these prayers, that raises their spirit and allows their own healing powers to work more completely and more fully. So for the almost 100 or so people whom we have on our healing list, we send our prayers of hope and wholeness and healing to them. People in this sanctuary tonight may also have people in their hearts whom they're thinking about, for whom a prayer of healing and wholeness would also be appropriate. And if you all would like to share names of people whom you are thinking about, I invite you to do so.
Roy Stumble.
Meredith Jernick and Rome Sterling.
Janet Beth Corn.
And for those who are with us online, please hold someone in your hearts if you know of someone who needs a prayer of healing and wholeness, and think of them as we offer Misha Berach. We offer Misha Berach. It's on page 371 at the middle of the page.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishe Berach imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
The Kiddush for this Erev Shabbat can be found on page 123 in the Siddur, page 123. We join one another and we follow Cantor Jacob.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit Ki hu yom techila lemikraei kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim Ivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat Kodeshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat
L'chaim. We continue now with Aleinu, on page 586, and we invite the community to rise. Page 586.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, la'teit gedula le'otzer breishit, shehu noteh shamayim ve'yosed aretz, u'moshav yikaro, v'shamayim mima'al, u'shchinat uzo begovhei meromim, u'Eloheinu ein od. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Please be seated. We continue on page 589. Please join me. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled, Adonai will reign forever and ever. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
I'm offering a meditation on page 592. The poet writes, when I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. At this moment in our service, we call to mind those who passed away from this world, those whose lives ended within the last 30 days, and those whose Yartzeiten occur at this time. If you are with us tonight in mourning or observing a Yartzeit, we invite you to rise as the name of your loved one is recited, and then together we'll recite the mourner's Kaddish, which will be on page 598. But these are the people whose lives inspired ours, whose lives lifted us up, and whom we remember at this moment. The recent deaths connected to members of our community. We remember Stacy Shapiro Sigmund, wife of Tim Sigmund, daughter of Mary and Lon Shapiro, and sister of Sarah Shapiro Jimenez and Shanna Shapiro. Ed Marshall Jr., father of Zane Chrysanthemum. Lonnie Beaver, brother-in-law of Barbara Vlock. June Gronick, stepmother of Nan Youngerman, step-grandmother of Rebecca Youngerman. And Susan Wilson, cousin of Nicole, Lauren, and Samantha Jar. And these are the Yartzeiten we observe at this time. In continuing dedication to their memories, we recall Bertha Bluth, Ruth Beaurod, Françoise V. Bress, Robin Craig, Edith Dizzen, Rona Weber Epstein, Sylvia Frank, Belle Goodman, Marion Graff, Samuel Greenbaum, Grace Hiles, Lillian Inchak, Harry Kaiser, Fanny Kaplan, Garrett Kavanaugh, Philip Kinsler, Bruce Litcher, Hyman H. Melcher, Lee Richard Nowick, Louise Rotman, Minnie Gans Sarnoff, Esther Silverman, Isaac Seniko, Alex Seniko, Philip Sklar, Belle Swidarski, Tibor Vespremi, Arthur Gerald Weisfield, and Lou Zemmel. And we remember the almost 3,000 victims who died on September 11th, 2001. There may be others who are being remembered by members of this worship community, and if you would like to add names to our Kaddish list, I'd like to invite you to do so now. Zichronam livracha, may all their memories be blessings in our hearts and the hearts and minds of all those who knew and loved them. Testifying to the faith that binds the generations of humanity together, we now invite you to turn to page 598, and we all rise as a community to offer the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Again, page 598. Please join one another. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal, shemei dekudsha b'rehu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, amen. May God send peace to the hearts of all who mourn and comfort those who are bereaved. And we say, amen. Please be seated. In a few moments, we will conclude our service, and when we do, we in our sanctuary here tonight are invited to the community, the Weinstein Community Court, to enjoy an Oneg Shabbat that is sponsored tonight by our Temple Beth El Sisterhood, our Women of Reform Judaism. So please stay after. I believe we still have also cookies from Just Bakery, that wonderful bakery in town that allows people who are coming back into the world after a time of incarceration to learn skills to go out to help the next generation and themselves of their own families. So you can take a cookie to go, you can take some oneg to go, obviously, as well, or you can stay and schmooze with one another. I'd like to welcome our guests who are with us in our sanctuary. Raise your hand if you're new here to Temple Beth El. We don't want to embarrass you, but just in case that others want to welcome you warmly, that's who you have to talk to tonight. So please do so. A few brief event announcements and worship announcements. First of all, tomorrow morning there will be Torah study, now hybrid, led by Steve Crade. What that means is that we'll have Torah study here in our adult lounge beginning at 9 o'clock, but also it'll be on Zoom. So you can also go to our website and register, and you'll get the Zoom link that will take you to that discussion, that Torah discussion. Tomorrow morning there's a second Torah session as well. It's led by our former educator, Larry Cohn. That's at 10:30. So we have one Torah study on the parasha of the week, on Ki Tetzei, a half-hour break for schmoozing and noshing, and then another Torah study session led by Larry Cohn. Things coming in the week ahead. I'll go here. So next Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning, there is Singles Creating Community Coffee Clatch happening. So just put it in the back of your minds. Singles Creating Community are meeting to have coffee, and 9 o'clock on Friday morning. Next Friday evening at 7:30, we gather here for Shabbat Midor Lador. Music for the season, music for the soul. So please join us for that. Next Saturday morning, of course, there will be, as there is every Saturday, there is every Shabbat morning, there is Torah study. Next week, to be led by Perry Asher. And next Saturday evening, on September 17th, we have at 8 o'clock in the evening our Selichot observance, Leil Selichot, a night of renewal and repentance. At least in the Ashkenazic world, which is where most of us in this community tend to come from, our Selichot observance happens about, it's usually the Saturday evening, sort of before the High-Hot, before Rosh Hashanah, unless that time frame is more than 3 days, and less than 3 days, in which case it's the week before Rosh Hashanah. So we'll be meeting here at 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, we'll have an oneg, we'll have a little reception with some food and schmoozing, and that will then lead us into worship later on, probably about 8:20 or something around there. It's not, we can't define exactly when our worship will start, but please join us for some nice post-Shabbat schmoozing and eating at 8 o'clock, and then we'll go into worship at whenever. The High Holy Days are coming, and we ask that members and non-members alike register for the worship service for our High Holy Days. You can do so online, going to www.tbemadison.org, and you look for worship, and under worship there's one special menu below that, which is High Holy Day Worship. So you'll be taken to the registration page for that. One bit of shameless self-promotion. This coming week, you may know about the Cap Times Idea Fest. Well, this year, for the first time in my memory, there will be a section or a session on the status of Wisconsin Jewry. So the Jews in Wisconsin. So there will be 4 panel members. There's Alan Klugman, who is the director of the Jewish Federation. Jonathan Pollock, who is a noted Jewish historian. He's on faculty at Madison College and also has a fellowship at University of Wisconsin. There is Hannah Rosenthal, who grew up in this synagogue and was I believe, among the first special envoys that our country had. She worked with the State Department, special envoy who worked on anti-Semitism, and me. So the 4 of us are serving on a panel. It's at 6 o'clock on Tuesday evening, and you can access that through the Cap Times website. I'll leave it to you to find. But I think it should be an interesting hour of discussion. Again, that's 6 o'clock on Tuesday evening.
This Tuesday?
Pardon me?
This coming Tuesday.
This coming Tuesday. I don't know whether it intersects with that special PBS documentary, but maybe they're up against each other, just like they go like this. But that's up for you all to decide. Both of those will be online somewhere in some archived place, so you could watch both in theory, even if they are overlapping a little bit. Anything else that we should be announcing, Cantor?
Nothing that comes to mind specifically at the moment.
You have a community of volunteers. You have a community of staff. You have a community of devoted people connected to this community who are working tirelessly to put High Holy Day worship together. So please be sure to join us for those worship opportunities, because we'll be worshiping in person and online. So join us where you feel the most comfortable. We would love to fill this sanctuary. We have a capacity of 300 or so. So please join us for worship here or join us online, whatever your desire will be. Cantor.
And so to conclude, we're going to turn to the supplement to page 4. And there are 3 words of Hebrew that I want to actually really make sure that we really take into our hearts in this moment. So I will tell you that the word yibaneh means it will be built or it will be established. But I wonder if there might be some folks who recognize those other 2 words. If you saw the word olam, does anybody who's here in our physical space have an idea of how they would translate the word olam, perhaps? Sorry? Not quite holy. Anybody else have a thought about the word olam?
World or universe.
World or universe. And I would say it could also mean eternity in time as well as in space. And then what about the word chesed? The word could be something related to goodness, absolutely.
Confidential loyalty, according to Nelson Glick.
covenantal loyalty, or I've also seen Rabbi Richard Levy translates it as covenantal love. Any other meanings of chesed that we've heard? You may have heard the translation loving kindness, or faithfulness, or in my translation here, gracious love. So these three words all of a sudden open up. It could mean that the world or the universe will be built with loving kindness. It could mean that a world of loving kindness will be built or it will be established. It could mean that loving kindness will be built forever. It could mean that all of these things combined all at once. But what Rabbi Menachem Creditor does is he opens this up further. He says that those things can only happen if we cultivate, if we build chesed, gracious love, within ourselves. The reason I'm opening this up so much is because it just so happens that Rabbi Creditor wrote this setting and this expansion of these three words right in the aftermath of the September 11 attacks in 2001. And he wrote this as his response for a desire for healing and for cultivating love in a world instead of cultivating hate. And so we'll offer these words and think about in this season of Elul and leading to the High Holy Days how we can cultivate and build chesed in ourselves, between us and our loved ones, so that indeed a world of chesed can be built forever. Olam chesed ibaneh, yadarai, rai, yadarai, rai. 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 I will build this world from love. Yadarai, rai, rai, yadarai, rai. And you must build this world from love. Yadarai, rai, rai, yadarai, rai. And if we build this world from love, yadarai, rai, rai, yadarai, rai, then God will build this world from love. Yadarai, rai, rai, yadarai, rai. Olam chesed ibaneh, 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 yadarai, rai, 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 rai.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.